When Arthur was kicked out of the pub, it was already completely dark, and a fine nasty rain was drizzling. Cursing, Arthur barely got up from the wet ground, smelling of cheap tobacco and old urine, and exhaled hoarsely. There was absolutely nowhere to go. That bitch, Louise, finally discovered that he was gradually pulling her savings out of the hiding place behind the painting, and pushed him out. Despite the slight intoxication and the punches he received in the pub, when that fat foreigner realized that Arthur was a banal cheat, his thoughts were clear. If you run out of money, then you need to steal it. In terms of the latter, Arthur was a master. In fact, theft, cheating and deception were the only way he could earn money. Arthur staggered across the slimy stones of the pavement towards the lighted avenue. His small eyes looked around tenaciously, as if they were feeling every figure hurrying by. For a moment, he thought about opening someone's car, but after thinking about it, he dismissed it as untenable. Now people have become extremely careful, and they try not to leave anything valuable in their cars. Whether it was the case earlier, when Arthur was engaged in car theft. Among other things, he managed to make a good profit by selling things found in other people's glove boxes. Thinking about the good old days, Arthur wandered over to the smelly trash cans on the corner of the old house. His gaze caught on a good new shoe sticking out from behind the tank. The shoe was put on the foot of an elderly citizen lying on the pavement. His salt and pepper gray hair was long and spilled over the soggy potato peelings. A sturdy blue cloak covered him from head to toe, and a hat half covered his face. Next to the old man, a raven was pecking at something, gleaming glossy in the trembling light. When Arthur approached, he jumped back, but then approached sideways and, squinting with a black eye, began rummaging through the garbage. "And here's the money," Arthur chuckled to himself. Approaching the old man, he furtively looked around, and, wincing at the smell of rotting garbage, he crouched down and ran his fingers into the inner pocket of his raincoat. With a deft movement, he faked the wallet, pulled it out, opened it and cursed in frustration. The wallet was empty. Arthur disgustedly threw him aside, and suddenly a red veil of anger fell over his eyes. What an evening! Arthur swung and kicked the lying old man in the side. The old man moaned and stirred. Arthur turned around, wondering why he was suddenly so angry, and was about to walk on, but suddenly the pavement gave way under his feet. Lying face down in the pungent-smelling garbage, Arthur heard footsteps, accompanied by the muffled rustle of a raincoat on the cobblestones. Something strange happened to him. He didn't even have the strength to lift his head, let alone roll over. Suddenly, something pushed him in the side, and Arthur involuntarily rolled over onto his back and met the gaze of the same gentleman who had not shown any signs of life a minute ago. One of his eyes slowly scanned Arthur's face as he lay, and the other was hidden in the shadow of the hat that the gentleman had already managed to put on his head. Duh. As usual, the old rascal was right, the old man said. Nothing's changing, look at that. The old man cleared his throat and spat out a long string of sticky saliva. Why did you kick an old man, you idiot? Now I have to give up the northern lands for 7 years, but is that really the case? Teach you, educate you, but you're still like pigs. No respect for old age. And also the crown of nature, wow. Ugh, it's disgusting to look at. Arthur felt the invisible bonds that seemed to be binding his body begin to fall off, and he twitched, trying to shake off the remnants of his confusion. Where are you going? The old man chuckled hoarsely. I lost the argument because of you. Do you think you're just going to leave? Come on, lie down." And Arthur froze like an ice statue. His tongue was numb. His mind was racing. The unreality of what was happening made it seem like he was dreaming, but the sharp stones digging into his sides said otherwise. It was cool outside, but Arthur could feel a trickle of sweat trickling down his forehead. The old man took off his hat, licked his finger, and held it out to the wind. "The northeast is blowing. Damn, it's over the mountains again. Where's my horse?" A horse. It flashed through Arthur's mind. What horse? As if in response to this thought, the sound of hooves was heard from a nearby alley. The old man threw back his head, and Arthur was horrified to see a deep black hole in place of his other eye. "Come here, my dear, we'll go home soon," the old man said affectionately into the void. At his voice, a huge horse came out of a dark alley, snorting and shaking its smooth hide. Arthur wanted to rub his eyes. A very strange shadow fell on the wall from the horse. It was like he had 8 legs. Arthur went cold and was already having a hard time restraining himself from hysteria. He tried to at least mumble, but in vain. His throat could not make a single sound. The old man patted the horse's neck, sighed, and looked at Arthur. "Asshole, do you understand that you set me up?" The old man said shrilly. "Like a fool, I still believe in your plague breed. I bet with this old scoundrel, my brother, that there would be at least one person who would help an old man who became ill at night. So what? I lay there for 3 hours, and the only one who approached me was the thief." The old man spat disgustedly on the wet ground. "The thread of your fate is about to break, believe me. I can see it as clearly as 3 people. The old man laughed maliciously. "Have a nice stay." With these words, Arthur's tormentor turned to the horse, about to jump into the saddle. Suddenly, an indignant raven squawked from behind. The old man turned around, looked at Arthur, and held out his hand. The raven took off heavily and, loudly flapping its wet wings, landed on his hand. "Oh, yeah. I almost forgot. I'm sorry." The old man smiled triumphantly. "Huggin', here's your dinner." And the last thing Arthur saw in his life was a crow's beak aimed at his eye. And then a saving darkness flooded his brain.